Hi, Cynthia. Can you hear me? This is Lillian.
Hi, Lillian.
Oh, good.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Mike Curtis as well. Happy New Year.
Hi,
Thank you.
Mike.
I'm not sure why there's no live picture of me, but that's fine. I prefer it actually this way.
So are we supposed to be on video or not?
I don't know. All I know is Jamie asked us to come online at 1:45 and
Right.
and so that's what I did, but yeah, I just don't know any other answers.
Hi, everybody. This is Jamie Kataoka, Elections Commission Secretary. I think the chair is having some technical difficulties, so we're just waiting for him. Thank you.
Okay. Start video. Where the hell's that? Oh, that's done there. Okay, start. Oh, good. Well, I'm there. Okay. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi, Scotty. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Do we have quorum?
Not yet.
Hi, Scotty. It's Kalani from Hilo.
Kalani, how are you doing, partner?
All right. All right.
You know, I was born in Pepacao, right?
No way.
Yep, Pepacao Clinic.
Didn't know they even had a clinic.
Well, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Was that part of the mill?
Yeah,
Like, because I mean, Pepikio is a huge community. It still is.
yeah,
But I
it was-
remember.
yeah. So all of us got born. Actually, my dad was at Onamea Sugar, which is down on Mill Road.
Yeah.
But everyone around there got born at the Pepacao Clinic, which was like a 5-room, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow,
And
amazing.
all birthed by Dr. Bergen, whose son became the big veterinarian up in Kamalela.
Yeah. Dr.
Yeah,
Bergen.
yeah. Well, his father birthed everybody from Hilo to Lapahoyhoy, I think.
Oh, Billy Bergen, huh? Was it Billy?
Yeah,
is the
Billy
brother?
Bergen.
Yeah, Billy Bergen.
Yeah, Billy's the son. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's a big vet out there.
He is. He's big. Yeah, he's big. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. He's a #1 livestock vet, I think, on this island.
Yeah, right. Do you know that livestock vets can look at an animal and tell you how much it weighs? They're
Yeah,
trained.
those guys are amazing.
Yeah, they're trained for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hope they don't look at people the same way, though.
Well, I think they probably do. when you take your dog to the vet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're sizing you up.
Yeah, to try to stay in shape.
Yeah. Well, good. I didn't know that about you. You grew up in Pipi. Oh, you were born in Pepikeo, at least.
Yeah, and then we went to Maui, and then I came back. I lived in Hilo from. I went back as an adult, although nobody ever thought I actually grew up. But I was there from '79 to '84 before the company transferred me to Oahu.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my friend's dad was one of the engineers there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thompson, the last name Thompson. He was still part of the mill.
Chair, we can begin anytime.
Do we have enough people?
We do.
Okay. Okay. I call the meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Chair Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Curtis,
Here.
Commissioner Dean,
Here.
Commissioner Kikuchi,
Here.
Commissioner Kohler, I see Commissioner Kohler here. Commissioner Kuwata is excused. Commissioner Mata,
Here.
Commissioner Seilstad, Commissioner Takenaka.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that Commissioner Kohler and whoever the other one was is at least hearing us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just Lillian Kohler.
Yeah, Lily.
Happy New Year.
Okay, great. Yes, thank you. Happy New Year to all of you.
Scotty,
Okay.
sorry, this is Lori. Scotty,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I ask that all commissioners please turn on their video feed?
I don't know how to do that. It used to do it automatically, but for some reason now it's not. It's showing this still picture. Yeah. I'll click on where it says live, not live transcript. What should I hit on the screen?
Lillian, look
Uh-huh.
on the bottom left of your screen.
Yes,
Do you see something that says video, start video, stop
Yes.
it? Press
Yes.
that. What's
see if
yours
that makes a
showing?
difference. Start video Alt V. Let me try Alt V. Co-host says, there you go.
There
All
you
right,
go.
great. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you very much.
Oh, Lillian. Okay.
Yes.
welcome.
Welcome.
Okay. Looking to get approval of the minutes of the meeting of June 10th, 2021.
So move.
Been so moved by Commissioner Kohler. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. All right. Status of operations report from the Chief Elections Officer. Scott? Scott Nago.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you, can't see you.
There.
I can see you.
Happy New
Okay.
Year.
Thank you.
Following the 2021 session, 4 acts have been signed. Act 7, which clarifies election proclamations and who files them. So in regards to voter service centers, if a proclamation needs to be filed, it now clarifies that the clerk issues the proclamation rather than the CEO. Before there was confusion and there's a timing issue. If a clerk had to, for an emergency, do something with the voter service center, they had to go through the CEO to issue the proclamation. This act now allows for the clerk to directly issue their own proclamation. Act 14 relating to reapportionment. This defines permanent resident and it also funds the reapportionment commission. Act 126 implements automatic voter registration. So we did implement automatic voter registration. Now applicants for driver's license can go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, and when they renew their driver's license or apply for a driver's license, they will be automatically registered. They will affirm or decline voter registration. And finally, Act 213. This is an elections by mail bill, which just does housekeeping things such as it amends the VR deadline from 30 days to 10 days, and it expands the time for our office to process voted ballots. For this upcoming session, we submitted 3 bills. One is a petition. It clarifies the petition signer withdrawal requirements. Basically, in the statute, there are things that a petitioner must, to withdraw their signature from a petition, must submit, but some of those things are no longer collected on the petition. So we're just cleaning it up so that what is required to withdraw your signature from a petition is actually on the petition. The second bill we're submitting is political parties. This just makes the deadline to receive their rules and party officers the same date. Currently, previously it used to be 1 day for rules and 1 day for party officers. This just makes them on 1 day. And finally, the last bill we're submitting is tabulation of ballots, which removes the 6 a.m. deadline, 6 a.m. the next morning deadline to determine recounts. In all practicality, we weren't finished counting until much after that. And we wouldn't, if we were to use the 6 a.m. deadline, we wouldn't be able to determine a recount from all ballots being counted. Other things we're working on, we are going to implement a ballot tracking system so voters can track previously voters could track their mail voted ballot. Now they're going to be able to track their outgoing issued ballot. That system is going to be in place for the 2022 primary and general election. It's also already being used on Kauai for their special election. We are working with reapportionment and redistricting. As you may already know, that the reapportionment process has been a little delayed. We are urging the commission to provide us a file plan by the end of this month so that we can begin our process of precincting and preparing for the 2022 elections. We are doing voter education. We have our young voter registration program, which is we work with the schools to identify or to target seniors to get them to register to vote. Additionally, we partnered with Olelo's Youth Exchange, which is a video contest. Students can submit a video about the importance of registering to vote. We do have a video series on our website talking about elections as well as a newsletter. And finally, we are implementing a new voting and vote counting system. So for the voter, they won't notice much of a difference. The ballot looks the same. It's just from an administration standpoint, this is the newer version of the voting system that we used previously. Same spender heart in our civic. It's just the latest model of voting system. With that said, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner,
I just-
questions?
This is Commissioner Kohler. I just wanted to thank CEO Nago for committing to the full implementation for the 2022 elections of the tracking mechanism that we wanted to see last year implemented so that voters can make sure that when they're doing mail-in voting, it's been received and it's been counted at the voting center. So thank you very much for following through on that and committing to getting that done for the 2022 elections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, public testimony. Any interested person may submit comments or testimony on any agenda item. I'd like to ask someone from the Office of Election Staff to make the announcement about testimony procedures.
Thank you, Chair. For individuals who would like to testify, please click raise hand under reactions on Zoom. If you are joining us by phone, please press *9. When recognized, please unmute your microphone before speaking. For the record, please state your first and last name. And for those testifiers joining us by phone, we will not have your name and will be identifying you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. The first testifier is Sandy Ma.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chair. Good afternoon, Chair, and members of the Elections Commission. Happy New Year. My name is Sandy Ma, and I'm with Common Cause Hawaii. Common Cause Hawaii is a nonpartisan, nonprofit grassroots organization dedicated to strengthening our representative democracy through voting and elections modernization efforts. You should have our written testimony before you, and I just want to highlight some points. 1, Common Cause thanks Office of Elections for providing progress reports regarding the implementation of automatic voter registration. We're very glad to learn today from Chief Elections Officer Nago's testimony that AVR is live as of now. We work with a network of current and former elections and Department of Transportation's officials who have implemented AVR across the nation. And these experts are all willing to assist Office of Elections and your cooperating agencies on AVR implementation to ensure AVR functionality and ease by end user. We are not here to second guess anyone. Well, our only goal is the smooth implementation of AVR for everyone's benefit. And we are happy to connect these experts with Office of Elections for AVR implementation. So please let us know if there's anything we could do to facilitate that connection. 2, we understand that the driver's license forms were updated in July 2021 to note the updated laws that were passed. We also work with the Center for Civic Design, and the Center for Civic Design can provide suggestions for these forms to be more user-friendly than they already are now. And we want to provide some updated suggestions if they could help. We hope that the Office of Elections and cooperating agencies will provide us with notice and opportunity for us to weigh in on future form changes so the Center for Civic Design can provide some guidance to help to make these forms more user-friendly in Hawaii. Third, we request some data sharing on automatic voter registration data now that AVR is live in Hawaii. This is so that we could understand how the new AVR system is working. The AVR data that would be most helpful to us is a monthly report with total transactions at the DMVs, total new registrations from DMVs, total updated registrations from DMVs, and the total number of applicants who declined an opportunity to register. Such a report and regular monthly tracking of AVR data will allow us to uncover any issues with the system, if there are any, and any improvements that could be made to AVR. And so this is helpful for OE, DMV, and the county clerks. So thank you, if you would be so kind as to share any data. Fourth, we've been trying to ascertain the workflow at the county DMVs, specifically any scripts that county clerks use when interacting with the person who is obtaining a new driver's license or a driver's license renewal. As you know, whenever anyone interacts with the DMV clerk to obtain a new driver's license, this is crucial for AVR's success. We haven't had much luck in getting the script that DMV clerks use when interacting with the public, but that's fine. We're in the middle of a pandemic, but we hope with Office of Elections assistance and the Commission's assistance, we could actually arrange some site visits to DMV branch offices to see how AVR system is actually working. So we ask if that could be possible. 5, when we were actually trying to get the workflow script at the DMV clerk's office, we learned that for certain counties, specifically Maui, Kauai, and Hawaii counties, and I see some county clerks here, we found out that these counties, Maui, Kauai, and Hawaii counties, actually permit driver's license holders to change their addresses without having to obtain new driver's licenses, and no voter registration information is provided when driver's licenses addresses are changed without having to get a new driver's license. And this actually would kind of defeat the purpose of AVR and may actually run afoul of the NVRA. And we don't see this actually being done on Oahu. And so there's this kind of conflict, and we're hoping that the Elections Commission and OE can provide some information or help with this kind of conflict. We provided the forums attached to our testimony about how to change your driver's license address without actually having to get a new driver's license. And I hope we can resolve this problem. And finally, as for the testimony by Chief Elections Officer Nago, and also in his status report, this concerns the mock election that were conducted in August of 2021. We're wondering if the public will be given an opportunity to familiarize themselves with the new voting equipment, if that entails the new voting equipment at the voter service centers. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions that you may have. Thank you again.
Thank you. Scott, are you there? Do you have any comments on this?
So regarding the driver's licensing procedures, as well as the change of address, we will continue to work with the State Department of Transportation to get the message out, to make sure that everybody's following the same procedures. We can ask them again to let us provide input on their form, but it is their form, and all we can do is ask. As far as the new voting equipment, we do plan to have voter ed, or we do plan to let voters familiarize themselves for voting on the new equipment at a voter service center, if they were to choose to vote in person at a voter service center. So that is in the works.
Thank you for that, Chief Elections Officer. If there's anything that Common Cause Hawaii may do to get out the word or to help you publicize that voter education opportunity, please let us know. And if there's any way or opportunity that we may help with interfacing with Department of Transportation to get the forms or updated, or work with county DMVs, or please let us know, because those forms actually came as a shock to us. And also if you're collecting DMV AVR data, we also ask that to be shared with us as well. But you have our written testimony, so thank you very much.
Thank you, will do.
They,
Chair?
commissioners, and yes, commissioners,
Okay.
any commissioners have a question? I see that Lillian.
Yes,
Go ahead.
I have just a few for Sandy Ma. Hi, when you, to follow up on this and the testimony you gave about perhaps the change of address aspects of the Department of Transportation driver's eds forms may, you had said, run afoul of the national the voter registration law. So could you elucidate how you think it may be in conflict with that?
Thank you, Commissioner Kohler. You do have a Deputy AG on this call, so I don't want to be giving you legal advice, so I will leave that to her. Our understanding of the National Voter Registration Act is that when you interact with the DMV, you are to be, when the public interacts with the DMV, the public is to be provided voter registration information. So when you have a driver's license and the public is given that change of address form without also being able to change their voter registration information, that may possibly, and like I said, I'm not giving you legal advice because you have a Deputy AG on staff.
No, just your, not legal advice, but the position of your
Yes.
organization on this. Yeah.
Yes, our position is that updated voter registration form should also be provided along with that change of address form that the 3 counties that we saw is providing to the public. Because we are an all vote by mail state, the voter registration is, when you change your driver's license, any licensing transaction, including the change of address, should be provided an opportunity to register the vote. And so when you're changing or updating your address, your driver's license address, but you're not giving updated voter registration information and the opportunity to update your voter registration information, and we're all vote by mail state, that creates a conflict with the National Voter Registration Act. And that's
So
what we're seeing.
just in layman's terms, the concern is that when a licensed driver in Hawaii changes their address and everything's okay with the Department of Motor Vehicles because they've complied with that, but what may occur from the Office of Elections point of view is that a mail-in ballot will be mailed to the old address that the driver's license, the licensee had submitted when they signed up for a driver's license, but not the new address. So it would go to an address, the ballot would go to an address that's no longer current for that individual. That's what you mean in layman's terms, right?
We are concerned about that because we do not know, we have not seen that new change of address is an official voter registration update.
Gotcha. It's not automated, if you will, as far
Correct.
as you can tell from the forms. Okay. And then the second and last question I have is, you expressed a concern to review the script that the Department of Motor Vehicles staff utilize or are trained on when they have people obtaining driver licenses and being given the opportunity to register to vote at that same time. And it could be that there is no script. Okay, so that might be why you didn't get it. Okay, but
You're absolutely right.
only because I've managed large bureaucracies and sometimes things don't get as micromanaged as a script, though that's a very efficient and a good way to ensure consistency in practice for the staff. So I'm a proponent of scripting. I used to do that a lot. But my question for you and your organization is, what is it, just for disclosure purposes and for transparency purposes here at this meeting and for the benefit of both the public who's listening in and the commissioners, what is your organization's interest specifically in the script? In other words, is it that you would like the script to reflect efforts to persuade the applicant for a driver's license to take advantage of this opportunity to vote, to register to vote? Or is it just strictly neutral? You just want to make sure that the script, if there is one or if there becomes one, that it would simply neutrally make sure to identify for the applicant that there is an opportunity to register to vote, which of course would be apparent to them from the application in writing, but from a point of view of interaction with the staff of the Department of Transportation, Department of Motor Vehicles, I take it that you folks want something to be included specifically in the script or in the communications that the Department of Transportation staff have with people who come to register, come to get licensed. So I'd like you to disclose, if you could, what is that, what's the magic language or the concepts at least that you want to make sure get imparted in that interaction?
Thank you for that great question, Commissioner Kohler. We wanted to accurately state the law that you can register to vote when you interact with the DMV and under what circumstances. Because it's not always clear to someone, like even for me, like I moved, not recently, but fairly recently, I moved. And when I fill out the form, and it's a non-carbon copy form, it wasn't clear to me if I had to like check all the boxes and fill it all out again, because was I in the same district? Are you in the same district? Are you not in the same district? Do you fill it out again? And I just filled it all out again because I want to be sure I get my ballot and vote. And so those are the type of things that a clerk can say, look, if you moved and you're in the same district, you really don't have to. But if you're not in the same district, yeah, and you want to get your ballot, you have to fill it out again. And that is very, very important to people. And because a lot of people could think, I'm already registered to vote, I don't need to do this again. But if you've moved and you moved to a different district, you have to do it again because that ballot is not going to follow you.
Right. And that would be an interaction when someone changes their address. What about the initial contact when someone comes to obtain their driver's license for the first time and are advised that they have the opportunity to register to vote? Do you have any particular suggestions for that?
That's just it. Do you want to vote? You don't, that's a very neutral. You could register to vote here, or you could register to vote
That's
online.
all. So basically it's making sure they can read what's on the form, basically. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all.
The form is not
That's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
Because sometimes, there could be a desire on your organization's behalf to go above and beyond that, to try to encourage people to register to vote rather than declining the opportunity. But that's all I wanted to do, was to have it disclosed whether or not you folks wanted that kind of extra effort made. And it sounds like that's not the case, that you just want what's on the form to be clarified for the people to know that they have this opportunity to register to vote. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Scotty, I have a question.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Sandy was talking about getting the AVR data, as, being more transparent and all of that. But is there an issue with privacy in that AVR data in terms of who's going to be getting that data? I mean, not that Common Cause is going to do anything bad to the, with the data, but who's going to have access to, I don't know what kind of personal information there is on that, in the database.
I think I can answer that.
Okay.
I don't think she's asking for data. I think she's asking for statistics.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much, Sandy. Always nice to see you. Okay, do we have another testifier?
Next testifier is Adriel Lam.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair, and happy New Year
Afternoon.
to election commissioners and all the election staff. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I do have information on the, I do have a chance to discuss the agenda item 7 later on, but I did have additional information to provide for public testimony at this time. So there's a page that I submitted this morning of clarifying information on voter registration that frankly brought me to this, to looking into all these election issues. I was looking through some of the election records, and let me start with the first one on top that I came across. Was within my own district here is a first-time voter named United States Hawaii, that's first, middle, and last name, who did vote on October 14th in this past general election. Person was registered to vote since 1984, or so the database says. There's also Michael star sign key. That's not a placeholder, that's the full last name star sign key that also voted in the 2020 general election through same-day registration, or so as the voter registration database says. And another one that popped up was Tara Iban, and then # name question mark. That's not a double question mark. The question mark is part of the last name, who also registered in September 21st of this past year. So granted, these might be data entry errors, but for those that did vote under these names, I have not been able to find these names through other records. I've asked the Honolulu County on certain names of these, and they said they could verify it with the driver's license, but to date, I have not found any ones that could be identified as such persons. If I can move on to another list of names, I can fairly assure you that Usa Y, last name starting with L, did not register to vote. There is another person by similar spelling of that address, and she has told me she does not register to vote, but she has been registered since, or so the database says, she has been registered since 2004. Lauren, last name starts with D, died in 2005. I know her father says she did not register to vote, and neither has his daughter-in-law, who has a name but different birth date, registered to vote. There's a Mariel A, last name starts with A, who in the voter database says registered to vote in April 21st, 1917. As I understand, you couldn't register to vote, you couldn't vote until you were 20 at that time. So I would suppose this person would have been born in at least 1897. There's also one more real questionable, the one that came up last night. I was asked her looking through some comparisons of these voter files, is from a April 30th voter file. Lute, last name starts with L, recorded a transaction update as of March 27th, 2020. However, in a voter file in the subsequent year, last year in September 21st, the last recorded transaction was February 6th, 2020, before the update of the last voter file. So my question is, when we're talking about voter database and registrations, what is the reliabilities of these registrations, and how are they checked? I will go to the next paragraph where last year, 16,008 registrations were flagged as questionable on March 27th and March 31st. All of them had transactions on those two dates. I don't know the methods. It might have been the signature cards, and they started to type these as questionable. But 4,000 of those registrations still voted, and we still know there's 15,000 that are still flagged as questionable in the database. And in addition to that, there are only other 16,000, I think it's 300 that were tagged questionables at that time. So what other methods were being used besides the signature cards to really look through the database? Like, for example, these previous 6 examples or 7 examples I provided were not flagged as questionable. And there was no review on that. Finally, for my public testimony time, I would just want to highlight again some concerns that other residents have had about extra ballots. I know I've seen friends talk about extra ballots, seen on Facebook, receiving ballots for past residents, non-residents, deceased relatives. I did a survey of, this might be a self-selecting survey, but I set up a table in Waikiki for people to come and provide information if they're interested in election integrity. And of the 127 respondents, I've already counted 20 incidences of extra or excess ballots to these 27 persons. I see that as a high incidence rate of extra ballots going out to voters and residents. And how many more are there out there that were excess that people have not reported or have not been informed about? So thank you for the opportunity to provide this testimony at this time. I'll stand by for agenda item number 7.
Okay, thank you. Scott, do you want to answer any of that at this time, or?
A lot of those are voter registration questions. Those are under the responsibility of the counties. We can follow up with them. I can say that the only way voters can be removed pursuant to federal law is if they fill out voter initiated cancellation or change of address, or if a mailing piece gets returned, any mailing piece. So it would be the signature card, the yellow card, ballots, anything that gets returned. Then we start the process of flagging them as questionable. Then we have to send out another piece of mail that's forwardable. And after 2 general elections, which is normally 2 or 4 years, the voter finally gets removed from the rolls. It's a federal law that's the only way we can remove voters.
May I ask a question about that? Okay, just want to be clear, and I realize there's another individual who provided some written testimony. I don't know if he's here. Wendell's his first name, I think. Anyway, he was citing our Hawaii law regarding removal of registered voters from the voter rolls, and I think that has caused a lot of confusion. So just to be clear again for the record, as I've learned in the last year of serving on this commission, our state law is not in compliance with the federal law. So the Office of Elections and the county election offices, all of us follow the federal law, not the state specific law with respect to removing registered voters from the voter rolls. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Mr. Nog, okay. So then you very quickly there went through what that process is, but I just want to be super clear to underline it. It could be proven indisputably with death certificates that 50,000 Hawaii registered voters are dead and still on the voter rolls. And according to the federal law, that would not, according to Hawaii's interpretation of the federal law, that would not be a basis for beginning the process of removing them from the voter roll. It has to be that a ballot is returned or the dead person initiates some kind of a request for their name to be removed from the voter rolls. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Mr. Nago? Okay, so what is the federal process that you guys are following
So
and that the counties are following?
If you pass away in the state of Hawaii, the county clerks periodically, I don't know if it's quarterly or monthly, get a list of people who passed away in the state of Hawaii. They can use that list to remove a voter from the rolls. But what they can't do is periodically we get people who call in, or not call in, but somebody tells us this person has passed away. we can't just remove them for that. It would have to be either a
Oh,
list
sure.
or a return mailing. So if you have a deceased person who passed away out of state in your household and you get that yellow card or any kind of election mailing, we do ask that you write not at this address or something and get it returned to the clerk's office so they can begin the process of removing them.
So it can be a request from someone who's not the person that's registered that initiates the review to see if
No.
that person has died.
First, it would have to be it would have to come from the Department of Health, their death list. That's that's one way. The other way is a return mailing, or I believe the counties have a form where a family member would sign and attest to the fact that the person has passed away. But we can't just automatically remove them because somebody notated. We used to
Right.
get this a lot in the polling place. People would notate in the poll book, person passed away, and we would have to follow up. We can't just
Okay.
automatically remove them.
And lastly, what about the general category? He gave lots of specific examples of Mr. Lamb of absurd names that
Yeah, those are a lot.
that somehow successfully got registered as a voter and are still on the voter rolls. So how do you address that?
So those can either one be data entry errors. We would have to go back to the counties and have them check their data entry stuff. However, though, if somebody registers prior to each election, we do send out a mailing. So if they're getting the mailing and not returned, the mailing's not returned, we can't flag them for anything. But if the mailing does get returned, then we can start the process of flagging them.
Yeah, I get lots of mail from tenants that haven't been a tenant of mine for 10 years, seriously. And I pops up now and then. I get mailings all the time from various tenants. I also get mailings of names that are bizarre too. But the point is, you can see that the process of relying on the US mail getting returned to the Office of Elections or the county elections office is not a very sound way, because the mail gets through. It just gets through and people just throw it in the trash. They don't necessarily say return to sender.
There's also another way that a voter gets flagged, and that's if you fill out a change of address form with the USPS. So if you fill out a change of address form, since these ballots are not, or these election mailings are non-portable, when we do go through the list and verify it against the change of address form, the voter gets flagged that way too.
Okay, so that's been very helpful.
Okay.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I want you.
A lot of the issues we deal with is kids going off to college and the family still lives in the house and they're getting mailings. Instead of returning it, they just either forward it off to the mainland because the child has never returned and lives on the mainland. We can't do anything there. So that's why if you do receive mailing for your child that's no longer residing in the household, we do ask that you return it so that we can begin the process. Otherwise, we don't have a way of knowing.
Okay, so it seems to me for voter integrity, there's a little bit of public education that might be in order. I mean, we do a lot. You explained in your status of operations report about the great efforts that you make to educate youth about the right to vote and their participation in voting. And you collaborate with Olelo and other partners to make sure that the public is aware of how to vote. Well, maybe there ought to be, for voter integrity purposes, some public education as well. That if you've got a kid in your house who's no longer living with you, that don't forward the voter registration to them or the ballot to them, etc. These types of things can help if we raise the awareness with the public. I don't think that the parents or others are being nefarious here. I just think that they probably think it's perfectly fine for their out-of-state child to be voting in the Hawaii election. So again, I would encourage that we consider some of the education that the Office of Elections does of the public about voting to include some things that will help with voter integrity.
And I agree with you.
Like,
and that is
like
something,
the examples we've been discussing.
I agree with you. And that is something that we do plan to expand on this go around, this election cycle.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on the subject?
Yes, Scott, this is Commissioner Dean.
Yes.
So, each voter that voted in the last election, they're making decisions effectively about $25,000 per voter. So if you take the budget of the state of Hawaii, divide by the number of voters, it's about 25,000. It seems to me that Mr. Adriel Lamb is bringing up a corrupted database problem, where your office, where the state of Hawaii and their counties are failing to maintain the database, and they're not responding to citizens and voters saying that there is mistakes. So my question is, are you not permitted by some state or federal law to affirmatively investigate a reported corruption in the database, or is it an administrative choice that your office is making, or that the counties are making, not to make corrections that are being brought to the office's attention?
No. So as far as the county clerks go, which do the voter registration, enter the data, register voters, a clerk can investigate if he feels the need to. So the best thing would be, if you know of these instances, to let the clerk know so he or she can investigate. The county clerk, can investigate their voter registration issues, those voter registration issues.
I just thought I heard earlier that as a matter of policy, that's not done unless there's a returned mailing or there's a pull from the list of deaths. So
no, I'm sorry.
Clarify that. Help me understand what's going on here.
That would be for removing voters.
Correct.
But if there is an instance where someone feels that a person is fraudulently registered or does not live there or is not who they say they are, they should alert the county clerks or their county clerk so that that clerk can do follow-up. Because if the clerk has the authority, if they feel necessary to follow up to ascertain the voter's registration.
So just the overall sense I'm getting is that it's a little bit laissez-faire, in terms of making sure our registration databases are accurate. I think the political environment now is, for better or for worse, different today than it was in prior years. So I think there's going to need to be a more extensive review of the policies and procedures for making sure that our voter registration rolls are kept accurate and kept precise, to keep people from Mr. Lamb, from coming and making these embarrassing complaints.
I can certainly bring that up with the county clerks.
Thank you.
Well, I do have a question about that, and that's a procedural question, and that is, and I concur with it, everything that Commissioner Dean has articulated here. Do you see a role in the Office of Election, Mr. Nago, for that type of oversight? Do you, in your office, have the oversight of the integrity of the data in the county's function? Clearly, that's their function. They're on the ground of maintaining voter registration rolls. But does the Office of Elections, the statewide Office of Elections, have an authority as oversight of that to ensure its integrity, and that they're doing it in a way that will ensure a better outcome than what we see in these embarrassing examples that Mr. Lamb has raised?
So we do have the authority, but we don't have the investigative powers such as the clerks to go and follow up on a registration roll. So we would.
So what is your authority? If you can't investigate, what would your authority consist of?
Our federal authority for federal authority, we would be maintaining the voter registration system. So that is one
Not the
statewide
data,
voter
not the data,
not the data,
not the
system
data,
that-
but just the mechanical system, the
the
mechanical
system
system.
that all counties use. So we have one voter registration system, and that is a federal law. As far as the data and maintaining the integrity, we don't have investigative powers. That lies with the county clerks who have that power, authority to follow up if they feel something is not right.
So it's completely discretionary at the county clerk's at the county voter registration offices. I mean,
Yes.
their offices
It's up to the
decide whether
clerk.
or not, up to them. That's it. And
Yes,
it
so
could, there
we
could be,
refer to
Mr. Lamb could bring us, again, 100,000 examples of weird names or other absurd things that are on the voter registration roll, and it wouldn't, your office does not have the statutory authority, you believe, to do anything about it other than to just suggest that the counties do a better job of what they're supposed to be doing, right?
No. So what we would do is we would forward it to the proper county clerk. If we believe there is fraud going on, we would forward it to the proper law enforcement to do investigation.
And what would that be, the proper law enforcement for the types of
It just
examples that
depends.
Mr. Lamb
We would be, well, we'd have to determine if there's fraud. If there's fraud, we would forward it to the AG's office or the prosecutor's office. More
Didn't
likely
you
the
just
AG's
say, though,
office.
that you don't have the investigative power?
The office
So how
doesn't.
could you
That's
do
why that's why we would have to, if we get a complaint about voter registration, we would forward it to the proper investigative authority, law enforcement authority, which would be the AG's office to investigate.
Okay, so you did receive, final point, you did receive Mr. Lamb's complaint about these things. Your office received.
I believe he said he forwarded
Yes.
it to the city clerk's office.
No, I also saw at the elections office. I think it was I could be wrong about the name, but I think it was TENN. Could be wrong about that. Provided a response to some of these things, but we'll be getting into some of those specific examples later. But if I believe that Mr. Lamb has already submitted this to you, this list to you of these examples that he just gave in public testimony. But if he hasn't, I'm sure he'll follow up and do that. And I just want to be clear on the record that what you'll do with that is you will forward it so it can be investigated for potential fraud. You'll forward it as a complaint to the AG's office. Is that it?
No,
Is that what you said?
First we'll forward it to the clerk's office so that they can follow up to see if it's a data entry error or if there's fraud. If they determine it's fraud, they'll forward it to the proper, which would probably be their prosecutor for investigative or law enforcement investigation. If he alleges a fraud to us, we would forward it to the AG's office for investigation.
If Mr. Lamb alleges that these examples that he found are fraudulent, if he uses that magic language, then you won't go to the counties necessarily. You'll just go straight and refer it off to the AG's office, right?
Yes.
Is that it? I just want to be clear so that Mr. Lamb knows what he can if he wishes to do next. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we can move ahead to the next.
The next
item.
testifier is Brett Colbus.
Okay, Mr. Colbus, welcome.
Good morning or good afternoon. Happy New Year. On July 6, 2021, the governor signed the Law Act 2013, which now clearly defines that the county clerks are responsible for updating the voter rolls. HRS 117, removal of names from register when re-registration. The clerk, after every general election, shall remove the names of registered voters who were identified as having an outdated or undeliverable address who did not vote in all elections held during the 2 previous federal election cycles. And it goes on to talk about some other stuff. My specific question if this commission can find out if that has been done since that act went into effect. And then the other question I would have, referring to Director Nago, I know he has said previously that at least he believes there's about 90 to 100,000 bad voter registrations in the database from a previous interview that he did sometime after the general election in 2020. So I would be interested to find out if those that has been done by the county clerks, and who would have oversight to make sure that they do that. I don't know if it's this body as the commission, or Mr. Nago as the state director, but it would this as far as I'm concerned, when the governor signed it into law, the clerk should have already been doing this. So that's what I would ask this commission to look into.
Scott, you want to answer that?
So he's referencing state law, which says you will be removed for failure to vote. Federal law says you cannot be removed for failure to vote. The only way you can be removed is what I explained earlier. I believe my reference to the bad addresses was those people who are on the rolls who are flagged as questionable address, and we would have to wait for 2 general elections to pass before we can remove them. Now, in an all-mail election, I just want to note that if you have a questionable address, you will not be sent a ballot, but you are still registered. In order to vote, you would have to update your registration in order to receive a ballot, or go to a voter service center and re-register and vote there.
Could I just make sure, because that kind of surprises me, and I'm glad to hear it, CEO Nago. So if there are 90,000 to 100,000, as you apparently previously identified as questionable addresses for voters who are registered, you're saying they can't be removed unless the 2-cycle thing has occurred and everything in compliance with the federal law, so they can't be taken off the voter rolls. However, you're saying that under our mail-in ballot law in Hawaii, they will not receive mail-in ballots. They need to, they'll be notified in some way that they need to update their address. Is that how it works?
They'll be flagged. We will not automatically send a ballot because we know there's something wrong with their address. If they still live there, we do, part of our voter education campaign is if you don't receive your ballot by this date, to contact your clerk's office because there may be something wrong with your record. And that's the trigger for them to call in. And for us to look at, if they're still there, they can re-register and they'll be sent a ballot, or they can go to a voter service center, re-register and vote.
Right. Okay, but I don't know what constitutes questionable address unless it's some kind of returned communication, written communication, because as I said, I receive mail all the time for people who aren't at this address, and you can easily use the post office to mail to made-up names. You can say Daffy Duck as the addressee, but it'll still go through to the address.
So if you do move and fill out a change of address, but you don't update your registration, you'll be flagged there. That would be questionable.
No, okay, so that's the principal flag. That's the principal flag. Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Kovas? You're good? Okay. All right. Next up.
Next testifier is Wendell Alento.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Scotty, I understand, and the election commissioners. I submitted my written testimony earlier, and there's quite a few details in there, but I just want to focus on one item, which is specifically my personal aggravation with our current vote by mail system is the way ballots are now received, and they don't have a proper voter verifiable paper audit trail. And it was started back, I sent an email to the Office of Elections, which were they were very kind to respond. And they gave me the answer that ballots, I quote, ballots do not contain any personal identifying information. Therefore, as they are separated from the return envelopes, there's no way for voters' identity to be connected to a specific ballot, which protects the secrecy of the votes. Please keep in mind a properly marked ballot is counted 100% of the time. Therefore, if you mark your ballot in accordance with the ballot instructions, your votes would have counted. My concern was in the beginning of this is I just want to make sure not just that my ballot was counted, but my ballot was counted and the vote was placed on the right candidate. And the reason I feel this is very important because this is the one, if you have to focus on one key issue on the swing states, on what is happening in election fraud, is this accountability, because it's so easy to add a lot of ballots because you have a separation from identifying material. I was told that secrecy is the main reason why they don't do that. I have to object because in section 3-177-61 of the Hawaii Administrative HAR, security of ballots and elections applies. It specifically states in that one paragraph that as equal to secrecy, there's voter verifiable paper audit trails. That's very important. That has always been important. Now, for some reason, by premeditated convenience, those words were left out of Act 136, as well as the this particular 11-4, because it just goes right into protecting the ballots and all that. But I want to bring up and resurrect, it has to be voter verifiable paper audit trails. That is what protects all of us. And when you separate the ballot from identifying information, that's where corruption happens. I yield. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there a question in there that you need an answer on?
I can explain.
Okay, thank you.
So voter verifiable paper audit trails are required for electronic voting. So if you went to a voter service center in 2020 and you voted on the electronic voting system, which is for accessibility purposes, there needed to be a paper trail. So you would have had that voter verifiable paper audit trail that basically says how you voted, and then it would be deposited into a ballot box. In a mail system, paper ballot is the voter verifiable paper audit trail. And I don't know of any system that would allow, that would be allowed under federal law that would allow the election office to tie how a voter voted back to a voter.
And if I could just comment on that, I think you're absolutely correct, CEO Nago, in making that distinction between the type of voting we did before versus the mail-in, the universal mail-in voting that we have now. And that was a seismic change in the capacity to ensure voter integrity, the voting integrity. And I don't think that was emphasized enough during the lobbying efforts, because it basically threw out the ability to do what we were able to do with the electronic voting systems when we implemented those instead of paper ballots, which was ensure that your vote was counted and counted correctly. And that all got swept away. It's not even possible, as you say, to reconstruct it in a mail-in voting environment. And that, as I think was correctly stated by the testifier, is an enormous opportunity for mischief.
Can I clarify? I don't believe I said that. The law requires that you have a paper audit trail, which in this case, if we ever needed to go back to the election, we could go back to the paper ballot. What the voter, my understanding is what the voter was asking for was to tell, he wanted to be able to know that how he voted, we would have a record of who he voted for, which I don't believe there's no federal system that it's not permissible under federal law.
No, there was a way to do it before with the electronic voting. There was a trail because you had the ballot you put into the machine. I'm talking about the old days when we first had the counting machines, Maybe that's a better way. I'm talking about then, because I was involved in the county office doing that and being poll watcher and all that stuff. When we first implemented electronic counting of ballots, okay? So that had the paper trail back to the voter because you were required by law to retain those paper ballots for a period of time. But anyway, I think that was the testifier's concern, that there is no way to ensure what it is he's asking for. And you've agreed there is no way to do that under the current system. And I think that's the only thing I want to underscore. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more on this subject? Thank you.
The next testifier is Carl Dix.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and commissioners. In the year 2020, I became somewhat of a local expert on elections in Hawaii. I spent most of my days for months, 3 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock every day, reading the HRS statutes. And I filed many court cases. I took one case all the way to the United States Supreme Court, complaining about the multiple violations of law by the Office of Elections and our state Supreme Court, violation of due process by allowing our election to be certified improperly and not by the guidelines of HRS statutes. I have over 6 gigabytes of videos and evidence that I sent to flash drives on Washington, D.C. I'm a local expert. I have all the evidence. I have all the pictures. I have everything to back up everything I say. And it's fallen on deaf ears. I sent by certified mail to the U.S. District Attorney, the State Attorney General, everybody, and nobody listened. Nobody did. In the United States Supreme Court, we asked for a writ of certiorari to issue a writ of mandamus to the state of Hawaii to clean up the act, follow the laws according to the laws, and they denied what we asked for. They just weren't going to do it. I'd be welcome to share, and Scott Nego knows me very well. And he knows I've complained, and it falls on deaf ears, and nothing's ever done. And I've helped Adriel Lamb. I got more information, and good job, Adriel, and good job, Wendell. We need it, and this all starts with Act 136. Has anybody actually read Act 136? It's 92 pages, and over 80% of it is crossed out. And according to Act 136, it is actually legal for a dead person to vote because it's written and then crossed out. So it was a right, and they were going to remove it. So they crossed it out, but the right remains. It's a horrible, horrible document. And I downloaded it direct from the Office of Elections website. I have copies of it. Try read it. I tried. 92 pages and 80% of it is lined out, crossed out, and all mixed up. It makes no. If it was a homework assignment, your child would get an F-, incomplete, and a note to the parent. What a horrible piece of legislation.
I yield. Thank you. What are you bringing before? Are you bringing something new to us today?
No, I'm just backing up what they say, and I can back
Right.
it up 100%. Thank you, Scotty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, who's next?
Chair, I see that Brett Colbus has his hand up, but he's already testified.
Mr. Colbus, do you have something to add that might be quick?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, the person running has shut me off, muted me before. The question wasn't answered. Who has the oversight to ensure that the counties do the voter roll removal? That I understand how it's supposed to be done. That seems to be it becomes a rolling type of thing. But who do the counties report to that they've done it, or who oversees to make sure that they have done it for after the election cycle?
Okay, thank you. Scott,
After every election, after every general election, we do have to provide stats such as the compliance with it's a federal requirement that we provide stats to the Federal Elections Assistance Commission, which is a Federal Elections Assistance Commission. They compile the stats, they print it in the Federal Register. We do provide this. We, the state, along with the counties, provide our stats to them on compliance.
If I could just one thing, foreshadow, okay, it'll only take 1 second, Chair. I believe that in the other item that will be raised by Mr. Lamb, because I read his communications with this body, he has identified inconsistencies between the data reported by the State Office of Commissions, such as the data that Mr. Nago just talked about that he reports to the feds on, and what the counties themselves have reported in terms of vote counts, in terms of numbers of envelopes versus ballots, security envelopes versus ballots, etc. So those things, the inconsistencies there needs to be a way of oversight and follow up with that. Even though you do report to the feds on your numbers, that doesn't mean your numbers are the final numbers, because there are inconsistencies between your numbers and the county numbers. But that's a foreshadow of some of the concerns that Mr. Lamb raises and that we'll discuss soon.
Okay, and apparently that's going to come after we have gone into executive session on other matters, and then we're coming back out. Is that correct? Am I correct in that? That's the way I read my agenda.
And why would we do that? Because when we go into executive session,
Because that's what the agenda says. That's why I'm trying to get
Well,
clarification. I'm trying to get clarification.
okay. But I would suggest, and I don't know about that. I didn't have any input or. The problem is when we go into executive session, the people who are listening in and participating in this meeting are left in abeyance. They don't know when we're coming.
I understand that. And I'm going to ask if we can jump ahead on one and then go back. Okay, that's what I'm going to try to do. All right.
That'd be great, Chair.
Lori, are we able to do that? Hello, is Lori with us?
Yes, that's fine to take agenda 7 out of order.
Okay, I would like, then I'm going to request that we move, we jump over section 6 right now and go to section 7, and then we will return to section 6 after that's complete. Okay, everybody good with that? Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to section 7. These are written complaints submitted by Adriel Lamb. Mr. Lamb, are you there you are, okay. You want to unmute yourself? You
Yes,
are,
sir.
you're unmuted, so
I'm
you have,
unmuted.
okay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I submitted 5 inquiries to the Office of Elections and Elections Office, and I see that the emails, responses, and my follow-up emails were all included. And I've condensed each of these inquiries into 5 slides with a summary. So if you have that in front of you, that was part of the submitted lecture materials that was put onto the agenda here. So for the first one, if for sake of explanation or to go over each of the election inquiries, I'll go with election inquiry 1. It was about the UUI codes on the voter registration database. I was looking through the different codes and I noticed a pattern of 128,000 of those codes had, at first I noticed it was the last 12 characters were all identical. Then I continued to look at the rest of the list that there were actually 56 sets of those codes. So the preceding 8 characters and 2 sets of 4 were broken down into 5 sets and 56 sets. And I did ask the elections office about, what is the nature, or asked the county clerk first about this. And they were not aware of this kind of encoding or this pattern within the list ID for each of the voters. And they suggested it was maybe the elections office or the Office of Elections or their contractor that set this up. When I did ask the Office of Elections about this pattern, the response was they couldn't respond to it. It's a matter of, this is security procedure or methods that cannot be discussed relating to critical infrastructure. So that's why I requested this be discussed at the Election Commission, because this is a matter of election security, security of the database, and methods that if I, as a private citizen, can see it and recognize something there that's a recognizable pattern, what other bad actor out there is able to do even more? I'm not a data analyst or a cyber analyst, but someone with much more computing power and much more capability can do something with that. And just to add to that, what I've submitted in testimony so far for this issue is that just this past weekend, I was just going over the patterns again, and noticed in the first, just looking for the first 1,000 lists, any 1,000, there are at least 74 pairs of nearly identical list IDs. Nearly identical is just 1 character off. And there was, I was looking through the UID literature, some of them are related to timestamps and which computer it came from, but none of these registrations, some of these pairs were days apart in the registration, but apparently they might have been come from the same computer at the same time. Is that, so the question is, there's a certain type of encoding here. What is the security level of it? Are you aware of that? And who else is aware of that kind of protocol for list IDs on the 128-bit encryption for list IDs? And I understand this might be for executive session, but the question is, I'm just looking at the numbers and there's a pattern here. And I'm not a cyber analyst. Right.
Can I ask a question just to understand, because I'm not a computer person? What do you mean? What is it that these lists are that you're noticing these common traits and patterns? What do these lists contain? What are they, if you did translate them, in what is it, what kind of data is it that they contain?
Yeah, my
These
apologies. I
lists.
should have explained the UUID. The UUID is a universally unique identifier code. It should be so unique that nothing else in the world at any time can be duplicated. I think it's.
And what are they used for?
They're used for database to separate, so that if you had a UUID for a database for car, vehicle registration or voter database or for your bank transaction, none of those unique identifiers to that one person would ever duplicate in any of these databases.
So are you saying there's a unique one of these supposedly for each voter, each person who voted? Is that what you're saying?
It's a 128-bit unique ID. So in a database, you might have 1,000 people, so you can number them 1 through 1,000. But when you start to have millions of people, you want to have something more unique and more than just 6 characters to make the 1 million. Then you add characters on it. But this one is 32 characters of mixture of numbers and letters. And so when you combine anything or ever assign a unique identifier to each voter, it would never be duplicated in any other database.
So, Mr. Lamb, the one thing, these are county issues.
Chair, I would beg to differ that this is a state registration system, that this is statewide. It happens, there's the same kind of coding comes in the Maui database. I haven't seen the Kauai or Big Island database, but it comes from the OLRVR, or as far as I can tell, olrvr.hawaii.gov. If you register on the olrvr.hawaii.gov, you come up with this identifier code. This started in about 2017. Prior to that, all the other list IDs were scrambled of letters and numbers. You couldn't get a pattern out of it, but starting in 2017, I noticed this string of 129,000 voter registrations with near identical list IDs.
Okay, let me let Mr. Nago jump in here and let's try to identify who's responsible for what, et cetera, et cetera. Scott, go ahead.
So what he's talking about is a unique identifier to the voter. Previously, a while ago, we used to use social security number, but that is private information. So we would if we just went strictly off of name and date of birth, you may have voters with the same name, same date of birth, rare and all. However, to distinguish a voter from any other voter, we assign them a unique identifier just so that we can distinguish one voter from another voter. So the numbers are unique to the voter, not unique to themselves.
So, Scott, the question I have is, so my overall impression of Mr. Lamb's point is that what he's telling us right now is very valid. I was less than clear in his documentation he provided in advance, but based on what he's telling me here in the session, he does have a very strong point. The question I have is whether our voting system's UUIDs conform to a International Standards Organization or Internet Engineering Task Force standard for generating those UUIDs. And if a proper UUID is going to be 128 bits. And if that's going to be what allows a computer system locally to guarantee that no other computer system in the world has generated a similar or an identical UUID, and probably not similar either with that number of bits. So if we are generating our UUIDs with 128 bits and our software conforms to those standards, then there's not going to be a criticism, that we can receive on the UUIDs that we have. And yes, Mr. Lamb is correct. This is fundamental to database integrity. It's fundamental to data security. And we do have to have UUIDs that are truly unique and that are generated according to one of those, to a commonly recognized standard.
I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Yeah. I am a computer person. It's one of my jobs, and what he is bringing to the commission is absolutely valid, and it does need to be addressed. And any graduate level or above computer expert is going to confirm that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to jump in on this? I think the real thing is who is, where is the responsibility? Is it the Office of Election of the state, or is it the counties, et cetera, et cetera? And we need to make sure we know what we're doing there on that. Thank you. Anybody else?
If I could add to that, I think Mr. Nago I took it that it was implicit in his response that it is his office's responsibility, and he thought that, and he's going to look into how it turned out that this result has occurred. But if we could get clarification on that, because I don't think that's a question, Chair, with all due respect. I think it is a statewide, it's the machinery and the mechanism to ensure the integrity of the election, and that's the statewide Office of Election. It is not, hasn't been delegated to each of the county clerks. But I'll just make sure that that's correct by asking the CEO Nago that question right now.
Thank you.
Am I correct that it is your office's responsibility? Is that correct, Mr. Nago? Yes, good. So that's not an outstanding question. What we're going to wait for is perhaps by the next meeting, or you could communicate in writing to all the explanation for how this result that Mr. Tam has identified has come to be, and whether or not you're using in generating those unique numbers and identifiers for each voter, if you're using any kind of standard that's accepted for the generation of those IDs, as I take it from Commissioner Dean's.
And more precisely, use a Microsoft implementation of the ISO standard. So if it's Microsoft and if it's ISO or Internet Engineering Task Force, then it's a legit UUID, and that would be able to form the basis of a properly managed elections database.
Like I said, I would have to follow up on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So I am.
Chair, if I could just add one more point to that last, is that,
Okay.
you know, the version of the UID that I could assume to be was version 1, which can place the date and time on that UID, how that UID was created. So there is information in the UIDs outside the database that someone can glean from and use for whatever purpose, which is, so the correlate to that question was, what authorization was there to gather that kind of information or keep that kind of information in the database?
And I want to echo, so this is I know it's backwards in the Zoom or the Zoom here, but this is a database book that just happened to be on my desk. And this book states that, you know, the standard of practice for database management is that your UUIDs don't contain any other information other than random data. So you don't want to have dates or anything else embedded in that UUID. You want to keep the UUIDs purely random and purely unique.
Okay, Scott.
Would have to get back to you on that.
Thank you, Chair. If I go on to the next inquiry that I submitted, this is regarding the publicly reported state report and the county reports. So these, I'll go back to the email for the specific numbers on it. So the state in the election reported 385,442 ballots. In the county, in a follow-up report after elections, reported 385,756 ballot envelopes. So the discrepancy here of how many ballot envelopes that the county received, they passed on to the state, and how many ballots that the state counted. Now there's a reconciliation report that says that the state originally counted 385,689 and then revised it to reconcile it 385,442. None of those two numbers still correlates to the county report of 385,756 ballot envelopes. That just brings, raises questions in my mind of what's the real count then? How many ballot envelopes were there, or how many actual ballots were counted? I still haven't found a satisfactory answer on that, apart from these are all computer generated and computer tabulated numbers collated together in some form and reported out. So is there a physical count, a record of the physical count of all the ballot envelopes? And is there a record of the physical count of all the ballots?
So there is a count of all the envelopes. When you did bring this to our attention, we did go back to our records that we received from the city. We did double check our numbers. Our numbers are correct for what they gave us. We don't know why their report that they issued after the fact, which was not reported to the feds, but just a pamphlet or a report that they created as a pamphlet was different. And we've asked them, we haven't received anything. We can't speak for their report because that's something they created and we don't know why their number is different, but we did go back to all the data we received from them with the number that we reported, and it is correct. So I'm not sure if they did something, it's a typo, I'm not sure, but we did ask them, we have not received an answer.
Can I ask a question of Mr.
Yes.
Tam? Well, one thing for the chair to be aware of, I don't know if you're watching the transcription, but you know, this meeting is now being recorded, but it's also captioned at the bottom of the screen. If you folks, I don't know, have been watching the translation at the bottom of the screen, I don't know if the transcript is going to be created out of that transcription at the bottom of the screen, but I'll tell you that the numbers that Mr. Lamb ran through just now are completely different than the way it was picked up on this translation. So and I didn't write down these numbers per his testimony, so I'm just alerting you that there are lots of transcription errors in this closed caption thing that's happening at the bottom of the screen here. But back to Mr. Lamb, and I hope that our transcript of this, the minutes of this meeting, are based on the actual testimony given and not this erroneous closed caption stuff going on at the bottom of the screen that I'm reading. But back to Mr. Lamb, I did not do the math in my head. What is the number of the discrepancy between the state's reported count and the county of Honolulu, city and county of Honolulu's count?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't put this math down, but it's 314 ballots difference from the reconciled number that the state reported and the number that the county reported. And I would just say this,
So
is
it's
that
larger, the state number is larger than the county?
the county's number is larger with ballot envelopes and the state number is smaller. But I would also add that when I inquired with the county, they had assumed that there would be more ballots than envelopes, because their possible explanation to me was maybe there were 2 ballots stuffed in an envelope. So they could have counted more ballots than envelopes. And so that's also raised a question in my mind, is why would they assume more ballots than envelopes when the numbers, without, I guess they didn't check what the numbers were that I presented to them, that there were more envelopes than ballots.
And is there an explanation of that from the Office of Elections or from the
It said-
county that you received, Mr. Lamb?
I have not received explanation of why there are more envelopes than ballots.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nago, you want to comment on that?
Like I said, once we were alerted to this, we went back to the numbers provided to us by the city and county of Honolulu. The numbers that we reported were the numbers that they gave us to report. Why their numbers are different in the report, I don't know. We've asked them. If there were 2 ballots in an envelope, we have procedures in the county center to make sure that we don't count either of them and we record it. So we do have a reconciliation process. So if somebody does put 2 ballots in an envelope, both of them aren't counted.
Gotcha. So what would you recommend, Mr. Nago, for Mr. Tam, or for us as the commission or yourself as the CEO of the Office of Election to do next with respect to this, because you did ask the county to provide an answer. You haven't received a response. What would you recommend are the next steps to be taken?
I mean, only they can answer the question of why the number changed. Number we looked to make sure we didn't have any transposition errors or any typos.
Correct.
So I can't answer, like we said, we don't know, and we can't answer why the number changed. Only they can.
So this is a discrepancy, sorry. This is a discrepancy of 314 plus the added nuance of why there are more ballots than envelopes. So there's both the discrepancy in the count, and there's the discrepancy in the number of ballots and envelopes received.
I believe the discrepancy is what we reported and what the county reported in their Honolulu,
right, in this pamphlet,
summary of reconciliation of voted ballots that they issued. Or Honolulu by the numbers.
I did look through the, if I may add a few more points, I did look through the Honolulu by the numbers, and they had, detailed numbers for, no signatures, spoiled ballots that had to be, had to be cured. But with such detail and accounting, which they, I guess their intent was to say they had very detailed number and counting, they produced a report. Why don't we have corroborating information at the state side? I guess my assumption is that what the county does is report up to the state, and the state collates and reports up to the feds. But it seems like there's two different systems counting something different and coming with different numbers.
No, so all those numbers you just explained, what is it? Missing signatures or things that need to be cured. Those numbers always at the county level. We would never see that. All we would get would be the envelope count and the ballot count. All those ballots that were not validated for processing would never come to us, so we would never see those numbers.
I have one last question for Mr. Nago, and is there a sweet spot or some threshold number in a discrepancy such as this between city and county and what they wrote in their county by numbers and what they reported to you, which you reported to the feds? Is there some number? Obviously 314 isn't big enough to cause your concern. Is there some number bigger than that that would raise concerns for you to raise it with a higher authority, such as the AG's office or somebody else?
I think any discrepancy you would want to find a difference. We've tried, but like I said, we went back to make sure that we weren't the issue here. We checked our numbers. We made sure that we reported it correctly, what they reported to us. Why they aren't answering, I wouldn't jump to any kind of conclusion until they answer, but they haven't answered.
Your hands are tied at this point.
I mean, I have no way of knowing why the number changed, because from what they gave us and what we reported is still the same number. And when they issued their
and you can't put any more heat on them or anything to try to get them to explain themselves.
We can ask again.
You can ask again. That's a good start.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, commissioners, for your attention to this. I mean, granted, 314 out of 500,000 is a small number, but to an individual voter, I think it matters. It matters to me that my vote counts, and if it was disposed or discarded, I would be concerned. And I know in the past election, in the primary, there were a couple of races that were decided by a few less than 300 votes. And I think it does matter in any trust in elections that our votes matter and are accounted.
Scott, are there discrepancies in every county, or is there just discrepancy?
No,
in one?
this discrepancy is because they issued a pamphlet that basically Honolulu by the numbers, which recap their election process. It's like an annual report that they personally issued themselves. Why the number is different, I don't know. I can't say because we did not have a hand in publishing that report.
Yeah. I would like you to ask them again if they could try to respond
can
to
do
you.
that.
Thank you. I'm sure we'd like to know that. Anybody else? I hear silence. Thank you very much,
Oh,
Mr.
You
Lamb.
hear my cat.
What?
You hear my cat crying.
I have
That's
3
my
cats
cat.
here, and it's getting close
Yeah,
to their
Well,
feeding time.
mine's a pain in the butt right now. I've been
Yeah.
trying to shoo it away for the last half
Yeah.
hour.
That doesn't work.
No,
Okay, Mr. Lamb, we appreciate your time and your energy and your presentation, and I agree with you. I want all votes to count except the ones that are illegal, and then I don't want them to count. And so if we have a discrepancy here, I'd like to know what what those numbers actually mean. Hopefully it's nothing too bad, but I appreciate all the work that you put into it, and thank you. And I will be talking to Mr. Nako shortly, and we will make sure that we take another shot at getting some final answers from the county.
Thank you, Chair. I want to just reiterate my appreciation for the commission for their attention to this. And I know you're taking a lot of time to do this, and it took a little while to get this on the agenda, but I hope I can bring to light some things that are concerned that I've talked to other members, other friends and relatives and neighbors about these things that they're also concerned about it. I'd like to get some good answers for that.
Right.
Go ahead. The next item, election inquiry number 3, might have a simple answer, but it was just a gnawing question in my mind ever since I saw the election report when it came out. This is precinct 39-5, which had 9 registered voters, but 12 ballots that were counted for that small precinct. And I talked with both the Office of Elections and Elections Office about this. Yes, there might have the number of registered voters is locked in after October 12th when all the voter registrations are supposed to be done. So the additional voters could have been walk-in voters. It's that's plausible, but that wasn't the explanation. That wasn't the reason. I mean, there was no straight answer of what happened. So I did some investigation on my own. I sent letters to all the registered voters. There are actually 13 names in that precinct. I received back responses, and it's a mail-in response, right? So 2 of these respondents said they voted at Kapolehale, which the voter registration record says they did not. They said they mailed in their ballot, and so that raises the question to me: is the information correct? Which is right? The mail-in response to me, or the mail-in response to the Office of Elections, or the state elections? I think the simple answer is yes. Go look at precinct 39-5, look at all the ballots, and we can see how the vote went.
So there are.
Just clarify, you're asking for, basically, it's a very, very small precinct. You could actually do very quickly a physical audit of every single voter there and what happened, and get an answer to this discrepancy. Correct, Mr. Lamb? That's what you're basically asking for?
That's correct.
And is there a response to that from the Office of Elections point of view?
So we do attribute it to election day registration, but Like, we do not administer election day registration or the walk-in voting. We do know that that area there is a newer development there. This is agricultural land with they're building homes on. So there could be people who register on election day, but like I said, we don't administer the voter service centers where election day registration would happen. So we can't give you a definitive answer. That would be the state.
Would you support and request from that county clerk's office in which this precinct resides to conduct a full audit due to this discrepancy?
I mean, we can always ask. Whether or not the clerk believes it's necessary is up to the clerk.
Right. I guess that's a question maybe for us, Chair, whether or not we would like to have
Well,
Mr.
I
Naga.
would like to at least make the request and see if they say no, then I think we should. I think it's a fairly simple request. This is a Wahoo, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
And I believe
it is.
Mr. Lamb's request actually did go to the clerk's office. I don't know if he received the response or not.
Oh, Mr. Lamb, did you receive a response?
I did talk to them about this before, and they said, I did not get a response from this email, but I did talk to them about this before, and their response was that, this is, the voter registration number is what the state's, they take care of registrations and ballot envelopes, but the state handles the ballot. So, go ask the state. And I would say all the residential addresses of that precinct are undeliverable mail. Unless they had a forwarding mail, I got five mailings back undeliverable.
Is this the place up in Cunha?
Yes.
It is.
Okay. Well, I don't like government officials giving answers quite like that. We're asking I think a relatively simple thing. It's not like we're asking for looking through a voting area that's got cajillion thousand people. Scott, I think we need to talk to the city and county, and I'm more than willing to go in there with you because I just think this is a fairly simple matter, and or could be, and it should be looked into, and we all deserve an answer. And the fact that they're not responding to you doesn't make me very happy either. I'm not responding to you in a positive way. So, Mr. Lamb, I can assure you that Mr. Naga and I are meeting next week, and we will have this conversation, and we will address this to the city and county. This isn't right. And I'm hoping, believe me, I'm hoping that this is a simple answer, that they had walk-in registration. I'm hoping that is what the answer is. But if it isn't, then we should know. And then, like I say, I like it in that it's a very small precinct. It's not like we're going to be looking at 20,000 things or whatever. Okay, thank you.
Chair, if you could, when you do have that conversation, remember Mr. Lamb raised two things. One was the difference between 12 and 9, but also that when he conducted a mail-in to people, 2 responded that they voted in person, but the record that county had was that they voted electronic by mail. So that's a nuance with respect to 2 of those voters as well that needs to be explained.
We will look into it. I guarantee it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? Everybody good on this subject? Thank you very much, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two more items here.
Oh.
And
cocktail hour.
So inquiry number 4, we did have conversations with Office of Elections a while back, and then more recently, it's regarding the manual audit certification. So this latest round was my email on December 30th. And I got a response from the Counting Center Operations Officer on January 3rd that laid out the procedures that the audit was done by districts. But I made clear in my follow-up response to that, the law says manual audit must be done by 10% of the precincts. And there are also other procedures outlined in the Hawaii Votes manual that said how the audit was supposed to be done. But all I was provided was the 11-page signature forms from the manual audit certification without any supporting documentation of how those procedures were done. So my request was, it doesn't seem like the audit was done by precinct as required by law. And is there paperwork or documentation to support that it was done by precincts as required by law?
So you are correct. It wasn't done by precinct, but the law requires a minimum number of precincts. When we switched to voting by mail, ballots are mixed in within the districts. So we did it by districts, but we did more than the minimum. So each district has a certain number of precincts. So we made sure to pick districts that add up to more than the minimum number of precincts, so that we actually did above and beyond precinct-wise. So even though it's 3 districts, if a district holds 4 or 5 precincts, that's, if you do the whole district, that's like doing 4 precincts or 5 precincts, the amount of precincts there are. The manual audit was conducted in front of official observers by the manual audit team. We did do the documentation. Could we have done better with documenting? Yes. This was our first time doing a manual audit in an all-mail election. This is something we're still learning. Like I said, we're moving to a new voting system in 2022 that will allow us to do it a little finer by the precinct level and allow it for us to easily manual audit by the precinct level rather than having to do the entire district, which did end up being a little cumbersome.
If I could ask Mr. Lamb, I thought one of the nuances that you raised was in the procedures in that manual that they were supposed to follow, that there was also, they were supposed to select by a random method, select the ones, that 10% that you're auditing by a random method, and that there was nothing that you received in the materials that they gave you to indicate that that was done in compliance with that aspect of the law as well. So do you know, Mr. Nago, if they were selected in random? If that's correct, Mr. Lamb. I don't know if I'm saying, if first I'm going to ask Mr. Lamb, did I summarize that correctly or not? I don't.
I think what I understood from the manual was, there's 10% of precincts, so 255 precincts, at least 25, and he showed 40 precincts, but it also stipulated for, 1 large precinct, 1 small precinct, 1 urban precinct, a rural precinct, and at least half of them by random. So I would expect in an audit, especially for critical infrastructure at the state level for a presidential election, that you would have some kind of documentation that says, yes, we conformed with large precinct with this. We confirmed a small precinct with this. And these were the ones that are selected at random. But what I see is 3 districts out of the 14 districts on the island of Oahu, which is a large representation of the electorate. But where's the randomness and where's the sampling that spreads across the state and the island for that matter?
So the randomness of the selection of the precincts was done by official observers. What we do is we put all the districts onto cards and we put them in, and they draw those cards randomly. So we didn't have any say in what districts were picked. They did. How we captured that, I guess we can create a certification form to say it was done randomly, but it was done it was picked by the official observers by just drawing numbers out of a hat per se.
Okay. And what about the size? It was also supposed to be
So
based
within
on
those
size.
districts, you do have, so the districts that were chosen, we did make sure that they were urban, rural. They were urban, rural, and then within each district, you do have different size precincts. So the whole district was done,
It
which
would be
includes
good.
all the precincts.
Yeah, and it would be good maybe, as Mr. Lamb is suggesting, that there be some kind of certification form that that you're actually adhering in the audit to the details that are prescribed in the manual.
That's something we will implement for the next election. Thank you.
Yeah, as I would stress just that, you know, the precinct level counting, because I think if the precinct is as local as you get, right? And so if we can get the counts right, the precincts, the district gets pretty large. Some districts span multiple communities. Some districts, so when you count numbers by districts, actually every district is the same, almost the same, right? Due to reapportionment, we have districts about roughly the same size, but the precincts aren't always the same size. And so you can get a better sampling and a better gauge of any variances in the counts by auditing the random sampling of precincts.
So like I said, in the next version of the voting system, which is more conducive to an elections by mail, we can actually do the audit by precinct rather than doing the entire district. So we will be able to get to the level that you are asking for.
Thank you.
Okay, are we done? Mr. Lane?
Right, gentlemen, sir, I just have one more, and it might be more of a county issue, but I just want to raise it as just something that still didn't sit right. I got it. There's an early voter file that went out on October 27th for the county that went in detail when any voter voted. So it has the date, time, or date stamp of when they voted. When the Honolulu County submitted their Honolulu by the numbers report, they also had, you know, running numbers of who vote or how many votes came in on which date. So I took it myself to tally up the number of votes for October 8th, October 10th, October 11th from the early voter file, and then compare that to the Honolulu by the numbers report of how many voted on October 10th, October 11th, October 12th. When I compared the two tallies, they didn't match up. Not at all. But someone suggested, well, maybe one of them's off by a day, because if you shift the deposit box ballots by one day, maybe it'll match up. So I did that. And so for the first week, the numbers are off by single digits, maybe 2, or they're exactly matched. But in the subsequent weeks, the numbers still start to diverge. There are negative numbers, negative differences, or positive differences. They went up and down as if it was being adjusted. And by the third week, it was in the thousands, or 10% of the ballot count that came in. Now, given that, you know, 200 something ballots came in the first 2 weeks, and almost 180,000 or 150,000 ballots came in the final week, there's a huge number in the final week that I don't have any data for. But why are these differences there that in a later report that changes the historical record of when ballots came in an earlier report?
So not knowing how they reported those ballots in their Honolulu by the numbers, I don't know if it was a physical envelope count that they used. I can't explain their numbers for them.
So perhaps when you meet, when the chair and you are meeting with City and County Elections Office
We can
next week,
inquire about
you
it.
can ask about this, is because, you know, they're offering real-time data every day of what they've received, and then that doesn't match up with what they're reporting about that same time period later. So it looks like things are way too fluid than what it should be.
Certainly
Okay,
something
thank
we
you.
can inquire about.
Okay,
Thank
we
you.
can ask that same question, that question. All right. Okay, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your
Thank you.
listening and
We
taking this
will get,
consideration.
we will get answers to the questions.
Thank you for your query.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Hello.
thank you very much. Okay, I believe that was the last of our testifiers. We need to now go back to number 6, which is approval of the minutes for executive session. So I need to call for a motion to enter executive session, please.
So moved.
Moved, seconded.
Second, Mike Curtis.
Okay, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye.
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 Good, here we go. Everybody there? Cynthia, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Jamie, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so all we have to do now is adjourn, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Takinaka.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Curtis.
Thank you, Curtis. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. See you next time, and Scott and I will go do our thing.
Good luck.
You.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Maybe
Okay.
we
Yes.
should hire Kawhi's clerk.
Well, maybe.